My name is Ethan, and up until about 6 weeks ago, I thought I had a pretty good handle on my life. I'm a partner at a decent-sized architectural firm in Chicago. I've got a comfortable condo overlooking Lake Michigan, and while I wouldn't call myself rich, I'm certainly not hurting for money. What I didn't have, and frankly didn't think I needed, was a whole lot of drama. Turns out, the universe had other plans for me, and it all started with a phone call from my younger sister, Chloe. Chloe and I have always had a complicated relationship. She's 5 years younger than me, and while I was the type to buckle down and study, she was always more of a free spirit. That's putting it mildly. She's flitted from one passion project to another over the years, from selling artisanal dog treats to trying to become a social media influencer, specializing in interpretive dance, no less. I've always tried to be supportive, but honestly, it's been exhausting watching her chase these fleeting dreams, often with little to no success. Our parents passed away a little over a year ago. It was tough, as you can imagine. They were good people, worked hard their whole lives, and managed to leave behind a pretty substantial estate. It wasn't just cash. It was their home in suburban Milwaukee, a small but profitable rental property downtown, and a decent portfolio of investments. The will was straightforward. Chloe and I were to split everything down the middle. I was named the executor mostly because I'm the more organized one. Chloe agreed without much fuss, probably because she figured I'd handle all the boring paperwork. I'd been slowly but surely working through everything, getting the house ready to sell, managing the rental, and keeping an eye on the investments. Chloe, meanwhile, seemed more interested in finding herself at some yoga retreat in Bali. We hadn't talked much beyond a few brief emails about the estate. That's why her call came as such a shock. It was a Tuesday afternoon. I remember it clearly. I was in a meeting with a client, going over the final blueprints for a new high-rise downtown, when my phone buzzed. I glanced down and saw Chloe's name. I usually let calls go to voicemail during meetings, but something about the timing felt off. I excused myself, stepping out into the hallway. "Hey, Chloe, everything okay?" I asked, trying to keep my voice low so as not to disturb the meeting. There was a slight hesitation on the other end, and then she said, her voice a little too casual, "Oh, hey Ethan. Yeah, everything's great. Just wanted to give you a heads up about the house." My stomach did a little flip. The house? What about it? We had just gotten a really good offer, and I was planning on calling her later that day to discuss the details. "Well," she said, drawing out the word, "I kind of took care of it." Took care of it? What does that even mean, Chloe? I was starting to feel a knot of anxiety tighten in my chest. "I sold it," she announced, as if she were telling me she'd picked up milk from the grocery store. I blinked, trying to process what she'd just said. You what? You sold our parents' house? Without even talking to me?" "Technically," she said, her tone shifting slightly, becoming a little defensive. "I did mention it a while back, remember? You were so busy with work. You probably didn't even read my email." I racked my brain, trying to recall any mention of selling the house from Chloe. There had been emails. Yes, mostly about her spiritual journey and how the energies in Bali were truly transformative. But selling the house? I was pretty sure I would have remembered that. "Chloe, I think I would remember you telling me you sold our biggest asset without my consent," I said, trying to keep the anger out of my voice. "Okay, fine. Maybe I didn't explicitly say sold," she conceded, "but I definitely hinted at it. Anyway, it's done now. And honestly, I think it worked out for the best." Worked out for the best? How could selling our parents' house, without my knowledge, possibly work out for the best? My voice was definitely rising now. I could feel my face getting hot. "Well," she said brightly, "I got a really good offer. Cash, quick closing, the whole 9 yards." "How much?" I asked, bracing myself for the worst. I knew Chloe wasn't exactly a shrewd negotiator. There was another pause. 300,000. 300,000. Our parents' house, in a decent suburb of Milwaukee. I had gotten an appraisal just a few months ago, and it came back at nearly 700,000. My jaw dropped. "Chloe, are you serious? 300,000? That's less than half of what it's worth. Hey, don't get all worked up, she said, her tone becoming dismissive. It was a good offer. The guy was really nice and he said he wanted to close quickly. Besides, dealing with realtors and open houses is such a hassle. This was so much easier. Easier for you, maybe? I practically yelled, forgetting all about the client meeting. Chloe, that house held so many memories, and it was a significant part of our inheritance. What were you thinking? Thinking about my future, Ethan? She snapped back. Thinking about finally doing something meaningful with my life. And selling our parents' house for a pittance is your idea of meaningful? I was beyond angry now. I felt betrayed, not just financially, but emotionally. It's an investment, okay? She said, her voice softening slightly, though I could still hear a hint of defiance. I'm starting a new business, a spiritual retreat center in Sedona, Arizona. It's going to be amazing, Ethan. Think yoga, meditation, organic food, sound baths. People are craving this kind of experience. So, you sold our inheritance to fund your latest venture? I said, the word dripping with sarcasm. It's not just a venture, Ethan. It's my calling. And honestly, she continued, her voice taking on a self-righteous tone that I knew all too well, I need this more than you do. You've got your fancy job and your fancy condo. I've been struggling, trying to find my way. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She had unilaterally sold a major piece of our shared inheritance for a ridiculously low price and was now trying to paint herself as the victim. And what about the rental property downtown? Did you take care of that too? I asked, my voice tight with suspicion. Well, not yet, she said a little too quickly, but I've been thinking about it. It could really help with the renovations for the retreat. That was it. I'd had enough. Chloe, I'm booking a flight to Milwaukee right now. I want to see what you've done. What? Why? It's already sold, Ethan. There's nothing to see. Oh, I think there is, I said, my voice low and dangerous. I want to see who you sold it to, and for exactly how much. And then we're going to talk about how you're going to fix this. I hung up before she could argue. My hands were shaking with a mixture of anger and disbelief. I went back into the meeting room, apologized to my client for the interruption, and rescheduled for the next day. Then, I went straight to my computer and booked the first flight to Milwaukee I could find. The flight felt like it took forever. My mind was racing, trying to make sense of Chloe's actions. Was she really that naive? Or was there something more going on? The more I thought about it, the less it seemed like simple incompetence. $300,000 for that house? It smelled fishy. When I finally landed in Milwaukee, I didn't even bother calling Chloe. I knew she'd just try to talk her way out of it. I rented a car and drove straight to our old neighborhood. As I pulled up to the house, a wave of memories washed over me. Christmases spent by the fireplace, summer barbecues in the backyard, Dad teaching me how to ride my bike in the driveway. It was more than just a house. It was the backdrop to our childhood. The house looked different. There was a new for sale sign in the front yard, this one from a different real estate company, that immediately set off alarm bells. I pulled into the driveway and got out of the car, my heart pounding. I walked up to the front door and peered through the living room window. The furniture was gone, the walls were freshly painted a stark white, and there were boxes stacked in the corners. It looked like someone was already preparing to move in. I took out my phone and called the number on the new for sale sign. A woman answered, her voice cheerful. Hi, I'm calling about the property at 123 Maple Street, I said. I was wondering if you could tell me a little more about it. Sure, she said. It's a beautiful 4-bedroom, 2.5 bath, recently renovated. We just listed it last week, and we've already had a lot of interest. Renovated? I asked, surprised. Our parents had kept the house in good condition, but it certainly hadn't been recently renovated. Yes, the previous owner did a fantastic job. New kitchen, updated bathrooms, the works. They really flipped it nicely. Flipped it? My stomach dropped. And how much are you asking for it? I held my breath, waiting for her answer. We've priced it at $680,000. she said. 680,000. Chloe had sold it for 300,000, and now it was back on the market for almost 700,000 after a quick renovation. The pieces started to fall into place, and a cold fury began to rise within me. I thanked the realtor and hung up. I knew what had happened. Chloe hadn't just been naive. She'd been played. Or worse, she'd been in on it. The nice guy who offered cash and a quick closing was likely a flipper who had taken advantage of her, knowing she was desperate or just plain ignorant. And Chloe, in her eagerness to fund her retreat, hadn't bothered to do her due diligence. I decided to drive by the rental property downtown. It was a small 2-unit building, nothing fancy, but it generated a steady income. As I pulled up, I saw a sign out front, "Under new management." That sinking feeling in my gut returned. I parked the car and walked over to the sign, taking down the phone number. I called the number, and a man answered. "Yeah, this is Mark." "Hi, Mark. I'm calling about the property at 456 Oak Street. I understand it's under new management." "That's right," he said. "We took over a couple of weeks ago." "Do you know who the previous owner was?" I asked. "Sure. A woman named Chloe. Sold it to us. Said she needed the cash." "And how much did she sell it for?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Let me check my records. Yeah, here it is. 200,000. 200,000. The rental property had been appraised at close to 400,000 just months ago. My head was spinning. Chloe had sold off nearly $1 million worth of real estate for a little over half that amount, and she'd done it all without my knowledge or consent. I drove back to my hotel, my mind reeling. I needed to talk to Chloe, but I knew a phone call wouldn't cut it. I needed to look her in the eye and get the truth. I booked a flight to Phoenix for the next morning. Sedona was only a couple of hours away, and I had a feeling I knew exactly where to find her. This spiritual retreat of hers was about to get a dose of reality, and Chloe was going to have some serious explaining to do. The smugness in her voice on the phone, the way she tried to justify her actions, it all pointed to something more than just bad judgment. I had a feeling there was a bigger story here, and I was determined to find out what it was. My sister had made a huge mistake, and I wasn't going to let her get away with it. This wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about the betrayal, the disrespect for our parents' memory, and the sheer audacity of her actions. I just hoped I could salvage something from this mess. The next morning, I caught an early flight to Phoenix and then rented another car. The drive to Sedona was beautiful, all red rocks and desert landscapes, but I was in no mood to appreciate the scenery. My mind was still churning, trying to piece together the puzzle of Chloe's actions. Was she really so blinded by her latest whim that she couldn't see she was being taken advantage of? Or was there something else going on? The address Chloe had given me for her spiritual retreat turned out to be a sprawling property on the outskirts of town, nestled among the iconic red rock formations. There was a main building that looked like a renovated ranch house, and several smaller cabins scattered around the property. A sign out front, painted in flowy script, read Serenity Springs. Awaken your inner self. I almost scoffed. More like, drain your bank account. I parked the car and walked towards the main building. I could hear the faint sound of chanting music drifting from inside. I took a deep breath and pushed open the front door. The interior was all soft lighting, natural wood, and calming colors. There were a few people lounging on cushions, sipping herbal tea and looking blissfully unaware of the storm brewing just outside. At the front desk, a woman with long, flowing gray hair and a serene smile greeted me. "Welcome to Serenity Springs," she said in a soothing voice. "How can I help you find your inner peace today?" "I'm looking for my sister, Chloe," I said, trying to keep my voice level. "She said she was staying here." The woman's smile didn't waver. "And your name is?" "Ethan," I replied. "Ah, yes, Chloe has mentioned you. She's currently leading a chakra alignment session in the Sunstone studio. If you'd like to wait in the reception area, I'm sure she'll be out shortly." Chakra alignment? Seriously? I just wanted to know why she'd sold our parents' legacy for next to nothing. I reluctantly took a seat on one of the plush cushions, trying to contain my impatience. The chanting music was starting to get on my nerves. About 20 minutes later, the door to the Sunstone studio opened, and a group of people in yoga pants and loose-fitting shirts filed out, looking suitably zen. And there, at the front of the group, was Chloe. She looked like she was in her element. She was wearing a white linen outfit. Her hair was pulled back in a loose bun, and she had that same blissed-out expression as the woman at the front desk. Her eyes landed on me, and her smile faltered for just a second before she recovered. "Ethan, what a surprise. What are you doing here?" she asked, her voice overly enthusiastic. "We need to talk, Chloe," I said, standing up. I wasn't about to have this conversation in the middle of her spiritual sanctuary. "Can it wait? I was just about to lead a guided meditation session." "No, it can't wait," I said firmly. "It's about the house and the rental property." Her face paled slightly. "Oh, right. Well, let's step outside." We walked out onto a patio overlooking the red rocks. The view was undeniably stunning, but I was too focused on Chloe to appreciate it. "So," I began, my voice low and controlled, "you sold the house for $300,000. She nodded. "Yes, I told you. And it's already back on the market for almost $700,000 after a quick renovation," I said, watching her reaction. Her eyes widened slightly, but she tried to play it off. "Really? Wow, that guy must be a great flipper." "And the rental property," I continued, not letting her off the hook. "You sold that for $200,000. It was worth almost twice that." This time, she didn't try to deny it. She just looked down at her feet. "I needed the money, Ethan. For this." I gestured around at the retreat center. "You threw away our inheritance to fund this fantasy?" "It's not a fantasy," she said, her voice rising defensively. "It's my dream, and it's going to be huge. People are searching for meaning, for connection. Serenity Springs is going to provide that for them. And you couldn't have found a more responsible way to fund it?" I asked, my anger bubbling to the surface. "You couldn't have talked to me? We could have explored other options. Maybe taken out a loan or even sold one property responsibly." "You wouldn't have understood," she said, shaking her head. "You always dismiss my ideas. You're so practical, so boring." "Boring? Chloe, I'm trying to be responsible. Our parents worked their entire lives for what they left us, and you just squandered a huge chunk of it on a whim." "It's not a whim," she insisted. "This is my calling, and I had to act fast. This opportunity came up, and I had to seize it." "What opportunity?" I pressed. "Who convinced you to sell everything so quickly and for so little?" She hesitated, her eyes darting around nervously. "No one convinced me. It was my decision." I didn't believe her. There was something she wasn't telling me. "Chloe, who was this nice guy who bought the house? Did you even get his full name?" She shrugged. "I don't remember. He just seemed really eager." "Eager to rip you off, you mean?" I said, my voice laced with frustration. "And the people who bought the rental property? Did they seem eager too?" She was silent for a moment, and then she said, her voice barely a whisper, "There was someone who helped me with all this." "Helped you? Or manipulated you?" I asked, my suspicion growing. "Who was it, Chloe?" She finally looked up at me, and I saw a flicker of fear in her eyes. "His name is Jasper. He's kind of my business partner here at Serenity Springs." "Business partner?" I repeated, raising an eyebrow. "So, this calling of yours is a joint venture?" She nodded slowly. "Yes, he had this vision for Serenity Springs and he needed funding. He said he could help me sell the properties quickly and get the cash I needed." "And you just trusted him?" I asked incredulously. "You didn't think to get a second opinion? To talk to a lawyer? To talk to your own brother?" "He made it sound so easy," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "He said he had experience with these kinds of things, and he was so persuasive. That usually meant trouble. So, where is this Jasper now?" He's around," she said vaguely. "Why do you want to know?" Because I have a feeling he's the one who orchestrated this whole thing, I said, my voice hardening. He saw an opportunity to make a quick buck, and he used you to do it. Just then, a man walked out onto the patio. He was tall and charismatic, with a neatly trimmed beard and piercing blue eyes. He was wearing a white linen shirt, just like Chloe. "Everything all right here, Chloe?" he asked, his voice smooth and confident. He looked at me, a polite but guarded expression on his face. "And you must be Ethan. Chloe has told me all about you." "Jasper, this is my brother, Ethan," Chloe said, her voice sounding a little strained. I sized him up. He had that air of someone who knew how to charm people, how to get what he wanted. My gut told me he was exactly the kind of person who would take advantage of Chloe's naivete. "It's a pleasure to finally meet you, Ethan," Jasper said, extending his hand. I hesitated for a moment before shaking it. His grip was firm. "Likewise," I said, my voice cool. "Chloe and I were just discussing the sale of our parents' properties." Jasper's smile didn't falter. "Ah, yes, Chloe was very eager to invest in Serenity Springs. It's a truly transformative venture." "Transformative for whom?" I asked pointedly. "Because it looks like you're the one who's really benefiting from it." Jasper chuckled, a low, confident sound. "I believe we're both benefiting, Ethan. Chloe has found her calling, and I have a dedicated partner. And you also have a significant amount of cash that used to belong to both of us," I countered. Chloe shifted uncomfortably. "Ethan, please don't start a scene." "I'm not trying to start a scene, Chloe. I just want to understand how you could be so reckless. Did you even see the paperwork for these sales? Did you have a lawyer look at anything?" She looked down again. "Jasper handled all of that." "Of course he did," I said, turning back to Jasper. "So, you just happened to know a couple of eager buyers who were willing to pay significantly less than market value for these properties?" Jasper's eyes narrowed slightly. "We found willing buyers who were able to close quickly. That was important to Chloe." "Important to Chloe, or convenient for you?" I pressed. "Ethan, please," Chloe pleaded. "Look, Ethan," Jasper said, his tone becoming a little sharper. "Chloe made an adult decision to invest her inheritance in this business. It's her money to do with as she sees fit." "It was our inheritance," I corrected him. "And she didn't have the right to sell it without my consent, especially not for such ridiculously low prices. I've seen the listings, Jasper. The house is already back on the market for almost $700,000. You flipped it, didn't you?" Jasper's composure finally cracked. "That's good business, Ethan. You should try it sometime." "And the rental property?" I continued, not letting him off the hook. "Did you flip that too?" He remained silent, but his tight jaw was answer enough. "You manipulated her, didn't you?" I said, turning to Chloe. "You convinced her to sell everything so you could line your own pockets." Chloe looked torn. He said it was the best way. He said we needed the capital quickly." "And you believed him?" I asked, my voice filled with disappointment. "He's very convincing, Ethan," she said weakly. "He has a vision." "His vision involves you being broke and him being rich, Chloe," I said bluntly. "He took advantage of you." "That's not true," she insisted, but even her own voice lacked conviction. "Then explain to me why the house is on the market for almost $700,000 just weeks after you sold it for $300,000. I challenged. She didn't have an answer. She just looked at Jasper, her eyes pleading. Jasper stepped forward, his demeanor shifting from charming to threatening. "Look, Ethan, this is between Chloe and me. You should just go back to your fancy life in Chicago and let us handle things." "Handle things? You've already handled things, Jasper. You've stolen a fortune from my family." "Stolen? That's a strong word," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "It's an accurate word," I retorted, "and I'm not going anywhere until this is resolved." "What do you want, Ethan?" Chloe asked, her voice filled with desperation. "I want our money back," I said, looking at both of them. "All of it," Jasper laughed. "That's not going to happen." "Oh, I think it is," I said, pulling out my phone. Because I've already spoken to a lawyer back in Milwaukee, and he's very interested in hearing about how you two conspired to defraud me out of my inheritance. Jasper's face paled. Chloe gasped. You wouldn't, Chloe said, her eyes wide with fear. Oh, I would, I said, my voice cold. You messed with my family, and you're going to regret it. The air crackled with tension. Jasper's smooth facade had completely crumbled, replaced by a look of panic. Chloe looked like she was about to burst into tears. What do you want us to do? Chloe finally asked, her voice trembling. First, I said, looking directly at Jasper, you're going to transfer every single dollar you made from flipping those properties back to Chloe and me, and then you're going to disappear from her life. Jasper opened his mouth to protest, but I cut him off. Don't even think about it. I have all the paperwork, all the evidence. My lawyer is ready to file suit first thing Monday morning. Trust me, Jasper, you don't want to go down this road. He looked from me to Chloe, his eyes calculating. He knew I meant business. Fine, he said, his voice grudging. Fine, I'll transfer the money. And you'll leave? Pressed. He nodded slowly. Yes, I'll leave. I turned to Chloe. And you? Are you finally going to see him for who he really is? Tears welled up in her eyes. I think so. The next few hours were a blur of tense phone calls and frantic wire transfers. Jasper, looking defeated and angry, transferred the profits from the house flip and the rental property sale into a joint account I had quickly set up. It wasn't the full market value, but it was a significant amount more than Chloe had originally received. As the sun began to set, painting the red rocks in fiery hues, Jasper packed his bags and left Serenity Springs without a word. Chloe stood on the porch, watching him go, a mixture of sadness and relief on her face. I put my arm around her. Are you okay? She leaned into me, letting out a shaky breath. I feel like an idiot, Ethan. He was a con artist, Chloe. He was good at what he did. But I should have known better, she said, her voice thick with emotion. I should have trusted you. It's okay, I said, squeezing her shoulder. What matters is that you see the truth now, and we'll figure things out from here. The future was still uncertain. We still needed to deal with selling the original house and the rental property properly. And Chloe had a lot of rebuilding to do, both financially and emotionally. But as we stood there, watching the stars begin to appear in the darkening sky, I felt a sense of relief wash over me. The truth was out, and we would face whatever came next together. Maybe, just maybe, this whole mess would end up bringing us closer in the end. But one thing was for sure, Chloe's spiritual journey had just taken a very unexpected and very real turn, and I had a feeling it was going to be a long road to recovery.